Dearly beloved, we have gathered here today for High Tea. High Tea is the new segment on the Sacred Seed podcast where Melanie, which is myself, and Alana sit down and answer questions, rather unscripted like, with lots of personality and probably way too much of our own personal opinions included in the answers. Sometimes we have accents. All of the time we have hot beverages in cute little cups and are under the influence of mind-altering substances.
Specifically plant medicine, I will caveat.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Organically grown, locally sourced.
With the intention to connect to our audience. Cheers to that.
Yes. Cheers. Alchemia, the Sacred Seed podcast. We definitely talk about some heavier conversations. Wounds, lineage, ancestral healing, traumas, all of the sorts. So yes, this playlist, this series, High Tea, is just a more casual, sitting around a circle with your friends, having a little hot beverage, and just connecting about the problems or the issues or the thoughts of the day. We have questions from the interwebs, and we'll be answering them in short little blurbs. We'll probably cover a lot of topics. If we get through all the questions, we do. If we don't, we don't. And some of them are for Alana in particular. Some of them are for me in particular. We'll probably banter back and forth and see how this goes. If you guys enjoy the High Tea series, please like, comment, let us know. Ask some questions if you want us to answer them. And this is really just an enjoyable, entertaining thing to have on in the background of your guys' day while you are maybe driving somewhere or cleaning the house. It is very intentional and from the heart and honest, but it's also very lighthearted and fun and playful, which is my forte, darling.
Absolutely.
Hey there. I've been pondering this a lot lately. How do you see the balance between feminine and masculine energies playing out in today's society? It feels like this is a delicate dance between the two, and lately it has been so hard to understand and filter out what someone might consider quote-unquote truth.
Yep.
Can you imagine so much of this, like, so much of the High Tea series is just like, yeah, that's true. It is a complicated dance, and it is hard to filter out what is true. You are not alone in feeling that way. How do you see the balance between feminine and masculine energies playing out in society today? I think, to be honest, it's not balanced, and that's how I see it playing out. I think in the 3D, as humans do, we like really rock that pendulum extreme swing thing from being really over masculine and then really counteracting that with like way too much feminine energy. And I think just as a society, let alone like individuals within that society, because this is a dance that's going on inside of us every single day, all day long. But I think in society, it takes longer for us to like equal out and balance out that massive swing between polarities, because you got so many different parts, so many different people, and everyone's at different like evolutionary phases. So it takes a while for that like massive pendulum swing to like slower down and get to a little bit more of a balanced, cohesive state. Maybe.
Yeah. I would agree. I think that's very true. It's I would say that like there's a huge resurgence of the feminine coming back in the collective. I think it's been like many hundreds of years in the making, and so I do feel that this aspect of that balancing piece is like coming closer to the foreground now, which is great. But yeah, I think like the big thing is what I'm seeing in the collective is that the masculine has been in so disservice to the feminine for so long, and that includes the feminine side of every single one of us, not just like men and women, but even the feminine like aspect or the feminine Gaia, Earth, you know, like she is the feminine, and we as humanity have mistreated her as well too. So we all have masculine qualities within us all that are being called forward to be healed. And how do you find that balance, or how do you like filter out? I think, yeah, it's like an individual journey. Like, you know, if you're seeing it and you're seeing that dance out there, it's like, you know, feel it, be with it, see what it means to you.
Yeah, I think with that comes recognizing that we might put things in the category of like toxic masculinity or toxic femininity, which nobody likes to talk about. Everyone just likes to focus on toxic masculinity right now. There's a toxic femininity also, by
Yeah.
the way. It's not that the feminine can do no harm. We've just been living in like a predominantly, like you said, male run world, very driven, very like, capitalism in and of itself is a very masculine structure. Our systems, all that, very masculine. So there has to be that opposite pendulum swing to bring more balance in. And I think that's what those little pivots inside of ourselves look like too. Like, oh wow, I hit that way too hard and I was way too driven and I was dogmatic in my approach and I didn't have a lot of flow or a lot of grace for myself or my body in that process. Maybe I need to do that next time, right? It's just living your life and like learning that lesson along the way.
Absolutely. And, you know, from the flip side of that whole conversation too, is like the masculine has been doing a good job evolving so far. I'm going to give them a shout out because look, for the first time ever, like look how safe we are as women to be able to come forward and for the feminine aspect of us to come forward and finally start to emerge in the way that it has been.
Yeah, people don't like to acknowledge that. Like the reason in Western culture that we have an opportunity to complain this much is because we're already this safe to a degree, right? Like there are still places in the world where if I opened my mouth to complain about perceived duties on my womanness, I would just get beaten.
Oh my God,
And like,
right?
and I'm not saying that we do not have like room to grow still, but like we also need to appreciate the incredible leaps that we have had, right? There are places that are a lot worse off on that whole spectrum than we are, and they need to be lifted up as well. But like to, like you said, have that gratitude and that appreciation and the recognition from where we actually truly are. I have like, it's a privilege to be able to be concerned to the degree that I am and to voice those concerns in a society this openly, this freely. We have a podcast, like that's already like where we're talking about this openly, like that's a thing already. So
Absolutely.
someone's gonna get super mad at me on the internet for
Don't put that out there.
that. Okay, next question. Move on, so they forget
All
about
right.
it.
All right. Next question. Okay. I've been on my own journey of spiritual growth lately, and I'm curious, what practices do you consider a passing fad or trend and that don't work for you? There are so many out there, and I'm getting overwhelmed with trying to decide what is conspiracy or actually practical and helpful.
Yeah. Uh, First of all, I think we should like look at the fact that just because something is trending, right, doesn't mean it's bad. Like, I mean, we have inclinations to jump on bandwagons when they're trending because there's momentum and energy and collective oomph behind something. That's what trending means. So, like, we might be more inclined to do something, but just because it's trending doesn't mean you should write it off. I have that tendency to be like, oh, everyone's doing it. I don't want to do it. I blame my Aquarius moon. But for me, you just got to try it. Like, there's no way that you're going to know if something is for you or is of service to you if you don't try it for yourself. Every path, we talk about this all the time, is unique unto you. So I can't tell you if something's going to work for you. No one, literally no one can. You have to just try it. That is life. You're here to experience stuff. Give it a go. Throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks. I will say, big recommendation is that if it doesn't work, don't shame yourself for not being like that girl you saw on Instagram who can drink the smoothie and have the salad and do 6K runs before 6 a.m. Like, if it does not work for you, accept that and let it go and move on and try to find something else that does. Like, don't identify with the fact that you're not living up to some perceived version of the way you're supposed to do something. Every path is different. Discover yours and let things go when they don't serve you quickly.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. 100% agree. I think a lot of us kind of still have this like wounding around like things that are like good for us or have to be hard. And it's like, you know, sometimes like a good tool that you have in your belt needs to be something that like is accessible and usable for you now and that works for you now. And so like, yeah, reach for things that work and build upon those.
Yeah. Boom. Next question. We're solving the world's problems one day
All
at a time.
right. Right. Telling it like it is. I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed by the constant bombardment of stimuli in today's world, and I was wondering, how do you manage to regulate your nervous system amidst all the chaos that seems to be one of the only ways I can imagine myself being able to affect my day-to-day life positively without too much of a time delay?
Oh, like regulating your nervous system is a good way to make immediate changes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long sentence. I think that's what it's saying.
Yeah. Breathy. Grammar, guys. How do I don't most of the time. No, that's not true. I think most of spiritual practices are nervous system regulations. We just filmed a whole podcast about how our nervous system is like our entire body's communication, holding, storing, emotional connection between mind and body, all ties into that nervous system. And therefore, working with our mind and our body and things like somatic meditations, somatic practices, breath work, those things that work and move emotions through our body is nervous system regulation. I think, to keep it short and keep it vague, a potent pause is the best tool I have ever cultivated in nervous system regulation, because it gives me a second to center and respond instead of chaotically react, which is what a lot of those ingrained fight or flight responses in our nervous system are doing. They're reacting to this intense amount of stimuli. I do my best to give myself a potent pause and see if that allows me to be more present in my body, feel the stuff, and then respond instead of react.
Yes, to all of that. Absolutely.
No, it's not easy though. Like, it's super easy to spiel that off on a podcast, but that is a life pursuit that I literally have built my whole spiritual practice around cultivating the skills to do that. Within that, deep contemplation practices, enough physical exercise that I don't have that built up anxiety in my body. Like, there is work that goes into preparing myself to even give myself the opportunity to pause before I react. And I still pop off in reaction all the time. If anybody talks to me in real life, I react on the podcast. I'm a very reactive person.
I love that. It's not an easy thing. And it's, I think when we talked on the podcast, one of the things that it's like that pause you talked about, and that like permission slip to just like, it's okay to be exactly as you are, and to drop those expectations that you needed to show up a certain way or be anything other than the way your body is in this moment.
Yeah, I don't know when we're going to release this first episode of High Tea, but the podcast we're talking about is like a nervous system regulation podcast. It's also not out by the time we're filming this, so I don't know I don't know what the title is going to be. It's about the nervous system. I'll link it below it'll be linked below.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next question.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Oh, you going?
I think it's number 5.
I think oh, yep. Get it.
Here's a big question for you. Where do you think psychedelics fit into the future of mental health treatment? It's such a hot topic right now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Yes.
That's such a hot topic right now. In nature, there is a remedy or a cure for all that ails us. There's a really poetic quote out there from some very intelligent individual that I can't repeat. But basically, it's the concept that nature has a remedy or a cure for all that ails humanity, or all the diseases or the mental health, whatever. Every issue that humans have, there's a thing in nature that is the counter to it. I really feel like following that train of thought, plant medicine, plant spirit medicine, ceremonial use, partaking with plant medicines is the counter to a lot of our mental health crises, like the opioid epidemic. We've got a lot of addiction issues. All of that stuff can really get tied into getting back in touch with who we are and removing a lot of those perceptual judgments. And I think plant medicine can really get us to that place where we can make super intense pivotal changes in our way our brains wire with that reaction, and the nervous system and our brains creating new neural connections and changing things very literally in our bodies and reprogramming how our bodies handle things. I think it's like a parallel with plant medicine. That's exactly what we as Alchemia work with in a lot of our retreats, would be those dynamics. And I think there's going to be a tipping point where it goes from we're fixing people who have broken X, Y, and Z, or we're on the reactiveness, and we get to be proactive. We get to be cultivating the relationships with the plant spirits to maintain that kind of mental health and that quality of life, so that we don't get to the point where we are right now, where we're spending so much time in repair mode.
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like with like the future of the psychedelic treatment, like on the other end of the spectrum, is that the powers that be, those are that are actually doing the studies right now, those are the people that can afford to, and those are like big pharma, like they want to be able to turn plant medicines into a magic pill. They want to isolate it down to that one little thing that's going to fix everybody, and they want to be able to make money off of it. Yeah, so I think that we're going to see kind of a bit of a split between the more pharmaceutical side, and then of course the more ceremonial side, and then there's a place in between, so there's going to be an interesting dance that might be happening there. I personally can't imagine taking, the spirit out of the ceremony and just, isolating something. But yeah, it'll be a dance for sure. And I hope that people reach for, circumstances, ceremonies more that are in alignment with the whole body experience and the holistic nature of us as humans.
Yeah, the whole plant medicine approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think true, like that's a very real possibility that's probably going to occur. Like we were talking about with that pendulum swing, it's gonna be a dynamic in there without a doubt. That capitalization off of it, right?
Yeah, always is.
Yeah, good old Western culture.
Yeah, capitalism to its finest, right?
Yeah. All right. So after those mind-blowing psychedelic experiences you speak of, how do you go about integrating all of those insights into your daily life? It seems like it could be quite the journey in and of itself, and I have seen so many people struggling with making real changes and not just jumping to the next quote-unquote champagne moment. Capitalizations with a few exclamation marks and a question mark. Help!
Oh my God, I love that. Champagne moment. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I've definitely made this mistake before. When I first started with plant medicine, and I don't even think it was a mistake, like I needed to do it. It was like I learned from doing that, from partaking in too many big mind opening, life altering, body opening, everything opening ceremonies. I had to learn that like, oh, I have to actually like integrate this, and like going and doing more is not helping. It was just starting to overwhelm us. It's just like I felt like I was just kept taking on and biting off more than I could chew. And so then, I had to find a new way to relate to the medicine, and that's when I stepped into a supportive role of angeling. And then once that was, then I switched into apprenticeship. And so then, stepping into being a curandero. So it's like, it's been an evolution over time. And it was exactly for that reason. It's like, I couldn't integrate this fast enough, but I felt so connected to the medicine. I wanted to be able to explore all aspects of it. So in a short answer is like, you can't help but integrate it because life has integrity woven into it. You have to like, you do the thing, you learn, it goes a certain way, and then you course correct. And that's exactly what you're going to do on this journey. And it just needs to be trusted.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I had a very opposite, I think, experience because I saw so many people do that, and I was really aware of the potential in me to want to escape and think that something else out there was going to do the work. Like I know that there's a very big human part of Melanie who's like, yeah, bye. Ayahuasca will do this, or mushrooms will fix this, and cannabis, and just I'm really familiar with that escapism want. So I was really nervous about that. So I I created almost too much structure and was like, no, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I really slowed my whole progress down because I was like, no, you haven't researched enough. You haven't integrated and grounded enough. So it's like a balancing act between that masculine pursuit and that feminine being, like that doing and the being. And integration for me is very much about embodiment, right? Making it my own, having it move for me in my life for my purposes, I guess.
Yeah, that's what integration is. It's like I think it's and you have to do it. You can't help but do it. And yeah, you have to it's everything that happens after ceremony. But I think it's like when we start to resist the change, which is supernatural due to nervous system causes, due to just feeling unsafe and the density of our lives, it could be challenging to shift things. But like it has to happen, and you'll be called, there'll be tension and resistance, and it'll feel challenging until you start to flow with that integration process. All right, this one's for you.
Ooh.
Melanie, you strike me as someone who really embraces their feminine energy. Am I right? How do you honor and embody that aspect of yourself on your day-to-day life?
You're so not right. It's so interesting too, right? When people perceive something that you don't feel. I have had a long history of really rising to that hyper masculinization of like achieving and doing and being very outwardly focused, especially in like my early 20s, of getting the job and doing the thing and jumping the hoop and being successful and all that stuff. I have really now had to realize that that was a extreme that I swung to in response to being a very tender-hearted, open little child when I came into this world, and I really suited up. Like, I really suited up just to survive. And now, as I talk about all the time, it's finding that center between that pendulum swing. I came in as soft and open and feminine as can be, and then this world does what this world does, and I rose to that by the protective mechanism of hyper-masculinization and hardening my heart and being really good at everything and trolley-law. And now it's just been an unraveling and an unthawing and a rediscovery of what is mine and what isn't mine, while simultaneously trying to not condemn masculine traits in me that are good traits that I may be overutilized or applied in wrong scenarios, right? So it's been a really interesting dance between the masculine and the feminine. And I think in different areas of your life, which is something I don't think people acknowledge, but in different areas of your life, you're going to pull a certain way on that spectrum. Like, of course, when you're at work, you're a little bit more masculine. You have to do stuff. If you're doing stuff, if we want to get really into it, doing anything has more of a masculine flavor in it than femininity, right? Like, you can get really nuanced with this. And I think my main focus these days is to give myself grace with that flow of in between those two states, right? Those can be really big extremes on that spectrum. And I'm just trying to get better at letting myself have permission to like stumble between those two things more freely, I guess. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Okay, I have to pause for 2 seconds because I have to plug in my iPad because I'm just noticing it's getting low and that's terrifying me. So I will be right back.
Okay. Put more hot water in my tea. Okay. I'm curious about your take on tapping into masculine energy and what we hear about toxic masculinity in the media. How do you see individuals cultivating that strength and clarity within themselves and making it not toxic?
Ooh, kind of talked a little bit about this already. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, again, first of all, like we talked about earlier, like thanking the men for how far we've come, and that like the masculine energy is within each and every one of us. I don't know if this is a woman or a man talking, but like it's realizing that it's the reason why that feminine feels so safe right now is because the masculine has allowed it. And so we trust that evolutionary process of it. Like, and you said it earlier too, like there's toxic sides to both masculine and feminine. We're just hearing a lot about the toxic masculine right now because the feminine is emerging and is finally getting its voice back and is sharing in all the ways in which she hasn't felt supported or, nurtured or cared for or felt safe, so it's, but it's because that we're safe enough to feel and to use our voices that, is proof in the pudding that we are moving in the right direction. I don't know how not to use the toxic energy. I guess it's just like sometimes we have to use the toxic energy and then see how it affects others, and then we learn that that's toxic. That's not a great way of relating to my feminine counterpart within or outside of yourself.
Yeah, I feel like that awareness piece is a really big part. Like, you have to witness what's occurring. You have to witness the masculine move and pay attention to the immediate people around you to see what's going on. Another big thing I think is important in this conversation that people don't really bring up a lot is like when people are having these conversations on social media, they're overgeneralizing an entire world experience of the masculine energy. And what I mean by that is like, just because we see a lot of really incredible examples of toxic masculinity out there does not mean that there is not beautiful men in their sacred masculine moving and leading and creating magic out there, right? So like for me, I always have to remember that the media shows me a really narrow view of reality. And it's super subjective and super manipulativable.
Manipulatable.
You can manipulate the crap out of it because algorithms. So like, just because, like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying toxic masculinity is not a thing. It is super a thing. Most of our society, especially in Western culture, capitalism, our relationship to Mother Earth right now is in a way a flavor of toxic masculinity. But what I am saying is that doesn't mean every man out there who is in their masculine is innately toxic. Not all of these traits are toxic all the time. It's situational. It's like their counterparts, the balance that's brought to the table. There's a lot of nuance that goes into what makes something toxic, right? Like, we can't just be like, oh, masculinity is the problem. If women ran the world, everything would be fine. It's like, that's a very naive way to think about, like, ignore a whole shadow potential for the feminine if we do that. Like,
Well, it's like I think a lot of the times the feminine has been given a lot more permission lately to feel through and to be like, you have to love me in my darkness and my shadows. And we're seeing, I think, that between women and like in female circles is like we are loving our darkness, we're loving our shadows more. And it's like if we want the men to step into this work, we have to allow them to, and we have to let them show their darkness too, and give them the opportunity to take responsibility for it. And with that comes like using our voices from the feminine side of ourselves. And yeah, like, calling out and like the masculine when it's not being of service to the feminine or not being of service to the whole or not being of service, to itself, even if it's being destructive.
Well, and I think that's a good point because there can be a glamorization of toxicity, and there is on both sides. And like you just brought out, like that dark feminine or like the villain era, I get it. Like there is a sense of, I've got a playlist dedicated to that, right? Like that empowered rage feminine response. I'm here for it. There's a time and place for that. But in the wrong setting, in the wrong place, at the wrong time, that is toxic behavior. Burning all your enemies, taking names, taking multiple and ruining hearts along the way. Like those are toxic behaviors that are harmful to yourself and other people. And we glamorize the crap out of it in media. And then it's like, oh, everyone has a heyday when they glamorize a big, strong man doing something like, I don't know, some cowboy thing. It's like, oh, that's an example of toxic masculinity. It's like, okay, it is. You're right. But so is everything that's trending right now, So it's just that perspective. Like there's two sides of this coin.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And like, I love what you said too, is like, yeah, like you give it has its time and its place. It's like that. It's how it's like it's not like we completely abandon it and say this is bad, but it's like, yeah, like when you're projecting that onto somebody, that's not good. But if if you're feeling that vibration and you're feeling your feelings and you're getting in touch with the darker side of you and loving that side of you and letting these feelings out, that's a good thing. And same with the masculine too. It's like, we have to see these. We can't deny these aspects. We can't just like tell them to like fuck off and go sit in a corner somewhere. And I think a lot of men are kind of feeling like that right now. Like they're feeling like, especially white men, like, I mean, I'm at the risk of sounding like, I'm like defending them. I might get shit on for that. Like, like they are like, it's like you want them to show up differently, but then you're not letting them show up differently. You're not giving them the chance.
Yeah, it can be, it's like a double-sided sword. And that's a big, this whole topic is the work right now of society, I think. Bringing balance to that masculine and that feminine and addressing those dynamics is literally in some way tied into all of the work that's going on in society at large, which is a whole podcast we could do.
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate that we have both masculine and feminine aspects within every single one of us. So it's like not like I'm calling out any one person. My masculine side has all of the same wounds that the collective has. And, you know, I'm constantly having to work through those and feel through those and shift those within me. And so does everybody out there. So we all have our little piece of responsibility of the collective to take on here.
Oh, so much so. And I think it's cute when people think they don't. Like, that's what I was going to say a little bit earlier. I'm like, oh, you think you don't? You don't think you've never perpetrated the toxic masculine tropes? All right. You've never been in the toxic frequency before, in that shadow realm. That's not been you, never. Like, you got to do some self-reflection.
Yeah. If only I could be that blissfully ignorant. I'm glad I'm not. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I've never hurt anybody's feelings ever either. Great. All right. I've got a friend who's just starting to dip their toes into the world of spirituality. Welcome. Any advice for them? It can feel like such a vast and overwhelming journey at times. It's hard not to feel like it's pointless. It is vast and overwhelming.
Yes. And it's not pointless, but at the same time, it's also pointless. It's kind of like this weird paradox.
Ripley's making appearances. Sorry. He's squeaking at me.
Aw, Ripley.
This is Ripples. I don't think he's been on the podcast yet. Maybe some barks in the distance.
He's so cute.
He's an active member of Alchemia.
Absolutely, he is. He's our emotional support dog at our retreats. At some of them, anyways.
Yes. 100%. I forget the question.
Should we just move on?
Yeah, next.
Or should we revisit?
Dog. It's the dog's fault. For those of you who are listening and not watching, Ripley is like my 4. How old are you, Ripley? You're 3 or 4. It's my 4-year-old brindle baby puppy boy. He is the best. Oh, any advice for the spiritual journey? I like that we just didn't give any. Yes, it is overwhelming and sometimes it feels pointless. Yeah, when you have not like completed any of the cycles and like gotten to the other side of any of your like rabbit holes, I guess, or like things you're working on, it can feel pointless because you feel like you're working really hard and your life's not getting better immediately. But that's literally why it's called work. And my advice in that regards is you just got to keep going and trust that hindsight's 2020, and you will see how many changes and subtle differences your life has gone through because of the work you've been doing. The proof truly is in the pudding. And I think the best advice I have is to try not to look outside of yourself for answers from other people and do your best to start building a relationship with your internal guidance system, your inner shaman, your heart, your team, your connection to spirit. Cultivate that, because that is truly your path. That is your connection to source, and you can trust that and you can follow that far beyond anything anybody else on Instagram or in a podcast tells you to do. So that's my thoughts.
Agreed. Find your own way. Find your own way and have fun at it, lean into the spots that feel good. Listen to your body, be in the moment, be with what's there. Give yourself permission to feel it all. I think the fruit does start to reinforce itself, like you said, over time as you start to really gain your bearings and learn to flex that muscle and use your tools and then your capacity for love is just so much more
there. Yeah. He's just more obnoxious and in the way.
He's like, Mom, it's snuggle time. He wants to play with high tea with us.
Yeah.
All right.
He's like, the vibes are good on the big comfy couch.
Aww. Super sweet. All right. I've got a friend who's just starting. We just did that one. Real talk. How do you practice self-love and self-compassion in a world that often feels so harsh and critical? Practice.
I think I practice self-love and self-compassion because the world is so harsh and critical. And because the world is so harsh and critical, I have no choice but to be on my own team and give myself compassion and grace. And, this is a big one. I changed the language because it's really hard. Oh, your dog breath. Because it's really hard to, when someone says, oh, practice self-love, my brain, like my immediate reaction is like, what does that mean? And for me, I had to discover what self-love meant for me. And it often looked like giving myself grace or patience when I was learning something, and discovering those different descriptive words that are my action steps to actually giving myself love, instead of having it be this like ethereal big concept that is not grounded in anything. Like, self-love is like untangible to me, but being kinder to myself, or paying attention to how I speak to myself when I make mistakes, like those are things I can do. I can work on that.
Exactly. I don't think I have anything to add to that one.
Yeah. Dip. Say dip your toe in that, but that was the previous question.
They're running in together now.
Yes. Okay. Oh, you're so distracting, Ripley. Rituals and ceremonies have always intrigued me. Can you share some of the most impactful ones you've experienced on your spiritual journey?
Oh boy, this could be like a podcast about each and every individual one. Yeah, no, I feel like they've all been very impactful in very different ways. And I think, you know, some of them are the most impactful when they're just the little ones. They're tiny little ones, those moments where we do a ritual and something shifts. And then I've also had some really big doorbusters, that's just like from the moment I stepped into that space of ceremony, my life was never the same afterward. And the amount of integration that I had to do was proportionally that much more as well, too. And so, yeah, for me, like I had some repressed trauma come up from childhood that I had repressed for a reason. And it's, it was challenging to see. It was challenging to feel. It was challenging to believe. It was, you fill in the blank, and I I can still have moments to this day where I doubt it or I don't feel connected to that anymore. But like my body knows, my body feels it, and so it's like it was for me. It was like really coming back to my body and allowing my body to process and release that, and that was having to happen in real time afterwards. So yeah, I mean, like every single psychedelic journey I've had is different. Every single one has helped me get perspective or shift something deeply in my life in some way. Some ceremonies I've, had to relearn the same thing. And, like there's no right or wrong way to journey or ceremony. I think it's having no expectations allows the magic to show up in each and every one.
Yeah, I would second that. I think I would also add that they're all, like you said, yeah, they're all life changing, but they do it very differently. Like whether those big champagne moments, and that's like an earthquake, right? Like your ground, the landscape of your whole existence changes, versus a small ritualistic approach to a rising morning ritual or something, right? Like that is like a slow incremental change. Both very powerful, and I think both really incredible tools to utilize at the right moment, right? Bless you.
Thank you. Yes, I for sure agree. So many. The world is literally falling apart. There are wars and hunger and revolutions. How do you manage to stay grounded and present amidst all the chaos? And how do you reconcile prioritizing something that can seem trivial like self-care?
Okay. My mind goes a lot of places for that one real quick. My first is perspective, because there has always been wars, there's always been hunger, and there has always been trial. And I do not say that to diminish what the planet is going through right now. We know that we have been born into an exceptionally transformative, pivotal time in the human history of all things. But Rome fell, civilizations fall, things change. It's part of the journey that we're here, that we are facing these collective shadows. It's very representative of our internal shadow dynamics. Some perspective is the first thing. It's like I do a big old zoom out. The other thing is to look at why in the world you think taking care of yourself is trivial. It might be a relationship with, oh, I need to do more in order to be worthy. Like people love me for what I do, not who I am. But the way that that question is worded in particular, I would really try and unpack why you would think caring for who you are, whether those are your physical needs, your mental needs, your emotional needs, why is that trivial? That being said, I see how if you're comparing those things to something like bombing Gaza, it seems trivial. Totally, I get that. But you also can't show up in that space and be effective if you have not armored up, cared for yourself, protected yourself energetically, fed your body, said your prayers, connected and loved with your family. Caring for your being is valid and very important. And you can't change the world if you're tired, sick, disconnected, drained, depressed. You matter in that combination. That's all I got.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And it's interesting because I did have a conversation with this about this with my friend the other day, and she's very, very strong activist in the like pro-Palestine, and I really like admire her for that. It's beautiful. And we were talking about, the responsibility of those in roles of holding space in the like on social media and the collective, to address what's going on. And so, like, I think there's also this interesting dance. We brought up the topic of white fragility, and it was illuminating for me to see the other side of that as well too. Is like, yes, you need to take care of yourself. Number one, 100% true. But also, are you maybe trying to avoid feeling to something so horrific that you don't want to see it and you don't want to feel it for the collective? That is the other side of that story. And I think that is what a lot of influencers or, leaders in the community are being called to that have been not engaging in this, is basically like people are wanting them to engage. They want their opinion. They want them to show up for what's obviously a really big part of our collective trauma at the moment. And, they're using an excuse of, I don't have the capacity for this. And maybe that's true. But also maybe, take care of yourself and set a time and to be like, okay, now let's come to the table and let's work this through, if both parties are fully able and willing to find some repair and it not be like an attack on either end,
Yeah. I also, that ties in like being scared to show up, right? Is what I hear in that. Is they don't know how to show up, so then they're scared to show up, and it's like, okay, we got to be honest and authentic and real here. If we are overwhelmed and we are sad, own that we are overwhelmed, that we are sad. That is a part of this, right? Like everything ties into this, and there's like this gurutization of people where it's like, hey, you can say that you are flabbergasted and still be effective in taking action and still share and still show up. You don't have to show up perfectly, and the fear of not being able to show up perfectly means you don't show up. Yeah. Showing up imperfect and human is better than not showing up. Well,
exactly. We all get to embody different aspects of this, like, of the wound. It's like, yeah, like you said, it's if you're flabbergasted and overwhelmed and like just in shock about it, like, that's a real human reaction. If you're feeling angry and you want to do something about it, there's another valid human reaction. We all get to show up differently, but we all get to like embody our aspect of that collective wound. It's important that we do because we're all connected.
Yeah. And I mean, that's an evolving answer to this question as well, because there will be times where you don't have, self-care is not as important as action, as standing up for people, as making your voice heard, as pedal to the metal, as like putting your money where your mouth is. Like, those are all actionable things that there will be times are a priority compared to your bubble bath. Especially with the questions and the wars and the dynamics that are coming faster and faster these days.
Yeah.
It's adapt or die season. It's show up. It's like, we're in it. It's Aquarius season. We're revolutionizing things. Take it on the chin. You got to learn. Your skin is in the game. You're in the arena. It's terrifying. Very exciting. Very terrifying. All of that.
100%. 100%. All right. How does spirituality intersect with social activism? How do you see these two worlds coming together to create positive change?
Wow, we are
Another
definitely,
themey
we're
one.
on a theme. We're on a theme today. Everything we just said.
Yeah.
Also, I think if you zoom out far enough, literally everything's intersecting. Everything intersects. Nothing exists in an echo chamber unto itself. So, of course, if you are cultivating and working and excavating these shadows in yourself, what is the point of doing any of that if you don't show up to mull over, engage in, figure out, work through, and fully be in the arena of the macro world that you are here and a part of? Why are you doing all of this work if you're not going to engage with the world around you, the better version that you are because of the work that you've done? What's the point?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like they are one and the same too. You know, I feel like the spiritual journey is like to be of service to the whole. It is just like, you know, like I feel like a lot of people when they describe the spiritual journey is like to be of service to self, and when you're being of service to the whole, you are being of service to yourself because we don't exist isolated. And so to be of service outside of you is being of service to that container of people and community that holds you.
It's interesting because there's simultaneously as this is all coming up, we see a lot of information and education in the mental health and the trauma healing world of narcissism, right? And there's
Mhm.
a flavor of my spiritual work is to evolve myself and to manifest my best life, and it's self-driven, right? It's very me, 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 me. If you are bypassing the excavation and discovery of the why we better ourselves, like the motivation behind why I am doing my work and caring is so that I can better love the people in my life. So that I can be of better service. It's one of those things that's a beautiful call to figure out your why and your motivation. Because if you are out there working on your manifestation dream board for the new Ferrari, for the new this, if it's all materialistic, then that's like a shopping Christmas list to Santa. Like, that's not the way I perceive the juice of manifestation being of the best service to the collective, right? Like, you got to question your why are you doing what you're doing. And I think that is the proof is in the pudding when it comes to these conversations around spirituality and social activism. I don't even like that word. Showing up in the world you're a part of, period. Whether that's local politics or in an online space or being brave enough to have a conversation, show up. Ask a question, dude. Don't be so scared that you can't participate, right? Like, and that's easier said than done.
Oh, 100%. It's like for me, like for years, it's like showing up on social media at all to any capacity is challenging, let alone, you know, engaging with something that's like kind of like, oh God, this feels like a bit of a landmine that I don't know what I'm going to like. I don't know what I'm going to step on, you know, like when you're engaging
Yeah.
with things that are triggering in the collective. So it's in social anything really, right? It's easy to like not look at those things. It's easy to turn a blind eye. That's like can be such a subconscious reaction just to be distracted. And oh look, we live in a world where there's like a million different distractions. So it's tough.
And people are gonna attack you no matter how you show up.
It's true
You
because
can
we're all just
have
mirrors of each other.
like you can have the most articulate, well thought out post all about the most current thing, and like someone's gonna be mad with the way you've delivered it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's even if they're on the same quote unquote side of that pendulum swing as you, right? Like sometimes people are just like, no, everything you believe is wrong.
Yeah,
And you're like, oh, okay.
totally. And like it's like
Cool.
also it's just like, you know what, like you're triggered. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome for showing you your shit. Now you got something to work on. Drop
Oh
little
yeah.
like seeds all around trying to help people shift and see the parts of themselves that need to come into more alignment.
Well, and the irony is like they're not wrong. Like, first of all, well, personally, I don't think anyone can do life wrong. Like,
Hmm.
there's no real morality in the grand scheme of things. Of course, there is right and wrong in the minor details, but the philosophical concept of right and wrong, like, I don't think you can
Yeah.
come in and say, "Hey, you're doing your life wrong" to someone,
No.
right?
But yeah, we do it all
I
the
think
time in cancel culture.
yes. High tea just got super serious.
It did. Those are intense questions,
It's
guys.
supposed to be fun, guys. Why are you asking questions that are so hard?
What is the next one here? Oh, I see
All
trauma
right.
in the words.
Ancestral trauma is a very heavy topic, but I'm curious, how do you approach healing that deep-rooted pain and suffering? It is a very heavy topic.
Yeah, I also think it's I don't know, when you start doing your spiritual work, it's one and the same. Ancestral trauma. I mean, I guess it comes up when it comes up, like we were talking about. Maybe that was in the nervous system podcast that we just did. It's, you have to trust that, when something arises in your life, that's your opening. You don't need to be like, I'm going to dive into my ancestral trauma, but maybe the thing that you're working with, and maybe it shows up just as a sensation in your body or an emotion or a thought even, when you start to unravel that and you start to pull on it, it might lead you down an ancestral pathway. Usually at some point when you're shifting a deep rooted pattern, it will, because genetically speaking, we do need to change and upgrade our DNA to hold the vibrations that we're embodying or we're moving into, and we're releasing things from the body. And so oftentimes we take on trauma or learned behaviors from our parents. And they've done research on this, is the trauma does turn on and off genes. Basically, it's we have our genetic code and then we have our epigenetics. It's the environment that has influenced it, and that gets passed to the next generation until they heal it, and then they switch it back the other way, or switch it to a new switch kind of thing, really, right? So we are changing our genetics when we're doing this work. We're changing the way our body shows up when we're doing nervous system work, when we're doing trauma work. And it's if it takes you there, then do it. Great. If you're meant to go there, you can trust, you're ready to shift this. Yeah, I mean, I guess I have had some ayahuasca ceremonies and retreats that, have been kind of based around that a little bit more, maybe more based around ancestral trauma. And the fact that there was that kind of intention set behind it did allow that to kind of come forward in a way where I got to kind of dive into some of those topics. Because like you said, it is heavy, and it does require, I think, some deep sacred holding of space in order for it to come up in a safe way. So yeah, I mean, I guess from that aspect, using your intention, if it's something you do want to connect to, just set your intention and trust, and no expectations whether or not it comes up or not.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's just a very natural part of our evolution, both biologic evolution and spiritual evolution. So I think those go really hand in hand. And when you look at ancestral work and trauma and how things just get passed down the lineage, good and bad, right? People often like to focus on the quote unquote ancestral trauma and not acknowledge
so true
positive things that your ancestors have done for you, because gratitude is due. Yeah, it just unravels along with everything else. You have to acknowledge it. It's there. It's rooted in your childhood. It's the way your parents, it's so evidently part of everything that to go specifically looking to do ancestral work is one avenue to the exact same result as just working on yourself.
Yeah, no. And I do feel for me, when I'm doing ancestral work, it's I'll start shifting a pattern, and then suddenly I might have a past relative or something come to mind, and I'm realizing this is a pattern that I share with them, and there's a thread that we have the same, and so I can almost feel them supporting me through that work as well too. So I mean, it can show up in so many different ways. You might be giving back baggage to your ancestors, being yeah, this isn't mine, I'm not carrying it anymore, you come get it, so it can just show up in any and every which way, symbolically, in your spiritual work, and it's part and parcel of everything.
Basically, it can be as big of a deal or as not as big of a deal as you decide.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Community is such an important part of the spiritual journey. Can you talk about how your community has supported you along the way, and tell me what to do if I'm lacking that support?
Yeah, community is an important piece. Definitely, I think at Alchemia, that's one of the reasons why we created Alchemia, is we all know that all these spiritual journeys are ultimately kind of on a lone path, a path inward, but it's great if we can have others around us that help support us and hold space for that, and are in alignment with that. I mean, find your people, make space for them, pray for them, the relationships will come when you're ready and when you're showing up for you in the way that you want others to show up, when you start walking the talk and being the person that you want to attract.
Those are, my two things. Ask like identify and ask for what you're trying to call in. Everyone's just like, oh, I want my people who love and accept me for myself. Do you love and accept yourself enough to even show people who you are so that they can choose to love and accept you? That's the first thing. You gotta put yourself out there and ask. What's my second thing? Oh, my second thing is that if those people if the people that you have in your life are not those people, you need to let those relationships go and only cultivate and accept the energetic exchanges in your life that are to the caliber of friendship or romance or whatever that you are looking for. If you continuously feed in and receive and dance with a lower energetic vibration of relationship and of friendship and of connection, then you are affirming that that's where you're at. You have to let the dead weight, that doesn't sound very nice, but you have to let the friends who are no longer in alignment with you go, because they need to be accepted and loved for where they're at. And that's not, the dissonance is there whether you've acknowledged it out loud or not. And if those energies aren't jiving, then you're holding them back too. So go be yourself, and then that's how you find your people. And you have to risk losing the people that you have that are subpar for where you're at on your energetic stuff.
Totally. I think it's really cool too that like now social media and like online is like, you know, some people that used to be from like really small towns that were like kind of like, you know, weirdos. And I mean, I'm a weirdo, so like they're my kind of people. But like, you know, like it's like they would be it's hard for them to find their people, hard for them to find their community. And I think that like the beauty of today's world is like you can find people in certain communities, and also like not all relationships are going to fill every role in your life. You know, it's not everybody's going to embody everything. So sometimes you can have like one friend that like you go to when you need this cup filled, and you go have another friend that you can go and be with when you need another cup filled, you know? So it's like we can cultivate a variety of friendships that fill us in different ways too. It doesn't need to be one spot for everything.
That is very true. Very true.
All right. Next.
Setting intentions is something I struggle with, and people make it sound like I'm not spiritual if I don't have an intention setting practice. Is this true? Why can't something just not be for me?
Well, firstly, I would say you do set intentions. There's no way you don't set intentions. I think we all do set intentions. Whether they're conscious intentions or not is the question. And so I think this comes down to what we say a lot of the times in alchemy is, you know, like, you know, not every practice is for you. And there's like this person's like intention setting practice. They might not be in alignment with what you need to do. Maybe you need to do something more simple or something more intuitive and more suited to you. And so, you know, keep looking, because you're doing it all the time. And intention setting is like, how are you showing up? It's just because it's it's not like a word, just because you don't like the word or you don't like the way this person is describing intentions doesn't mean that you get to be exempt from doing it in every moment like we all do. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Mel?
That awareness piece is like for sure important, because like you said, you have intentions, unspoken expectations, perceived ways you think things ought to go or how you think things ought to move. You are constantly in energetic communion with the cosmic void. And from your message, it just sounds like you're kind of unaware of what you are yelling into the void, because you are yelling something into that void. So maybe, yeah, try, instead of swearing off some specific intention practice, maybe try just like realizing your unspoken or unrealized intentions. And also, there was something else I wanted to point out in the way this was worded that was, like I'm not spiritual if I don't have an intention setting practice. Can we just throw out the concept that that someone can be not spiritual? Like, that's insane. Like, if I don't do this, I'm not a spiritual person. Like, especially because those comments usually come from people who are within the spiritual community. It's like, man, I thought we all agreed that we're all just spirits having human experience, which implies everyone is innately spiritual. Like, you can't, not doing something physical in the 3D, like not having a yoga practice or a 6 a.m. wake up call where you do a cold plunge in a green smoothie, that does not make you exempt from being a spiritual person, a spiritual being, a spirit, a soul on a path on planet Earth. There's no way spirituality looks like anything. Stop doing that to each other. Makes me mad.
Oh my gosh, right? I know the fact that somebody could be more spiritual than another is absolutely ridiculous. And that's what I love about like true spirituality is that it doesn't hold judgment. It doesn't hold hierarchy. And it's this paradox is like, yes, in nature there are these things. We do see hierarchy. Some people are better runners than other people. Some people do have different gifts and things. But like at a spiritual level, we are all the same. You know, we are all
Yeah.
equals. We are one.
It's that paradox. It's like we exist on multiple dimensions at once. If we're talking here in the 3D, no, I can't run faster than that dude who's been sprinting his whole life. It's not in me. That's just a 3D reality. But does that mean that if we don't pop up to the 4th D or the 5th D, that we are equal in our essence and rights as humans to be existing in our glory of expression of love? Like, all of that is true all at the same time. It's the paradox of having multiple holographic dimensions existing on one spot moment of time simultaneously.
Yeah,
Next
exactly.
question.
Deal. All right. Okay. This one is
This is a ridiculous podcast.
It's a bit ridiculous. I love it. Consciousness expansion sounds fascinating. What practices have you found most effective for tapping into those higher states of awareness? Plant medicine.
Yeah, yep. I love the beginning of that. Consciousness expansion sounds fascinating. Yeah, it's one way to put it. I feel like I'm just dissecting the questions now, but also I think that you have no choice but to expand your consciousness. You can't not. I think that's what life is. Our spirits or our souls decided to be put into these bodies to experience and expand consciousness. No? Is that not the meaning of life?
I feel that way for sure. Absolutely. From the moment you are born, you're learning. From the moment you're born, you're adapting to your environment. From the moment you're born, you're expanding your consciousness. You're becoming more self-aware. You're remembering the truth of your being.
Yeah.
Some people resist it more. Some people don't.
So we said plant medicine right away. And if I'm to take this question and like zoom out even more, because plant medicine falls into this category for me, what expands my consciousness the most is doing things that I am uncomfortable doing or I'm scared of doing. Because that's one of the big reasons plant medicine is so expansive for me. It's because I have to reckon and grapple with the raw primal emotions like fear. And that is why, as a human engaging with these medicines or even specific practices like breath work or cold plunges for a really long time or like all of these things take me outside of my mind and put me in this place of like truly viscerally having to adapt and experience things in the moment. And I am outside of my comfort zone. That comfort zone is like this slow killer of mediocrity. And as soon as you step outside of that, you are expanding. You're risking. You got to risk it for the biscuit. The vulnerability of co-creating with the cosmic void, showing up. So I think that's what I would say. My consciousness expansion recommendation is do something that scares the shit out of you. And
absolutely.
You know what? If it's good, if it turns out good or if it turns out bad, your consciousness is still expanding.
Absolutely. Yeah. Live your life for sure. Enjoy it. Get your hands dirty. Try something new. See what you like. Discard the rest. Do it once, do it a million times, whatever, just live. You're going to expand consciously. I don't
just live. What's that meme where the guy's like, we can't recommend just yes we can live. It's like so
yes. Love it.
This whole podcast is just going to turn into like a slightly stoned pep talk for you to do unhinged things. And at this point, I'm going to tell you that we do not endorse anything that's illegal or unhinged. This is not advice. This is just stories. So the next question. Trusting in the universe is ridiculously tough for me. Oh, these are funny. Especially when things feel uncertain. I'm talking anxiety and panic attacks. How do you cultivate that sense of trust and surrender?
Little by little. It's a choice. It's a choice to
Yeah.
show up and be
By
in your
doing stuff
body.
I've told you.
Yeah. Which a lot of the time, so if we're going from this example, which is like he's got panic attacks and anxiety or something, like
Yeah.
it's like maybe the scariest thing is like being in your body when you're having a panic attack. You know, I think that's probably because
Yeah.
like that's probably the scariest thing.
Breathing
So
through
maybe
it.
that's where you need to do it. Maybe you start by being in your body, like maybe when you're not having a panic attack and just, you know, practice there. But you need to be in your body. And so feeling it fully, allowing yourself to be there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else really, like other than just, you know, feeling your body, doing things that scare you, leaning in, getting your hands dirty. What else? I don't know.
Maybe explore the concept of I can do hard things.
Yeah,
Because then, like, you
good point.
start to, like, you also, like, don't trust yourself if you don't trust the universe, you know? Like, you don't trust this, that everything is showing up for you and it's not happening to you, and you don't maybe trust how you move and interact with the relationship of you and the world. So I would maybe try, like, a perception, like a whole pivot in the way you view those moments is like, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me.
Yes,
And I can
100%.
move through and do hard things. And that's how I would maybe address the trust bit, because I know that I trust in the benevolence of the universe and of God because I have leaped off of something in my mind via psychedelics, and I have been caught in a beautiful, compassionate, benevolent force that held me with love and kindness, and I have experienced that viscerally. So I know for me that this universe moves with love, kindness, and grace in its intentions and in its directions. And if you haven't had those experiences, I get how it's hard to trust that. But I would say put yourself in a situation where you leap and you trust and you, I don't know, safely. Setting and safety is the side
100%.
tangent for that one. But to trust, you got to jump. That's what trust is. You can't figure out how to trust. You learn to trust by trusting. And then you realize, oh, this person doesn't get trust. That person doesn't get trust. And I've never been let down by the cosmos when it came to a blind leap of faith.
Yes. The final thing that comes to mind with this question specifically, especially with like, there's like kind of a dynamic with the body where there's a distrust of being in body, there's this fear of being in body, would be patience. You know, like drop the expectations on like a timeline or like that I'm never going to experience this again, and just come back fully into the moment and really just be with what's there. And like, yeah, it's happening for me over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's a good point. Trust,
Our
it's like
next
a
one.
rabid dog, you know?
Yeah.
You can't just walk up to a dog that's been abused its whole life and expect it to trust you. You got to sit in the same cage as it. You got to give it some food. You got to give it space. Like, there's a relationship, right? That's the thing. I think people need to remember that. A lot of these questions is like, this is reciprocal. You are in a
Yeah.
relationship with the world out there. You don't get to just show up and say, this is what's up. Like, there's a trust is like a two-way relational dynamic, you know?
Yeah, it really is. All right. Feeling stuck is something I think we've all experienced at some point, and for me, it's been this way for what feels like years. Any words of wisdoms for those who might be feeling a bit lost?
Man, Alana and I talk about this a lot because we have a lot of earth placements in our little astrological charts. And a good saying that summarizes this one is, what you resist persists. So the only way to become unstuck is becoming super okay with where you are and stop trying to not be stuck.
Yeah, exactly. And like just trusting that exactly where you are, then the moment that you drop into that, in the moment that you're exactly where you are, you're no longer lost. And then that's like a
Yeah.
fresh opening for you to shift out of that vibration and to find your new way forward. But like, you know, I can relate to this because I think like you and I, with both of our astrological placements, it's like cardinal signs is just like that, like for you too. Yeah. That like we've just been like for the past, 7 years or 15-year cycle kind of ending, I think it was 7, 15. I don't know. You know more than I do about astrology. But yeah, like with that piece, it's true. Like, like just trust that when the time comes, it will come and nothing lasts forever. And, it's tough, I know you, but you also got to feel all that, like those, like the frustration and the impatience and transmute those vibrations too. It's all part of it.
Yeah, and this ties into that shadow of entropy too. We talk about the shadow of entropy in the gene keys, and the first gene key, it comes up quite a bit. There is such a dynamic of, oh, I should be doing this and I could be doing this. None of that's real. And I think that's always eased my process when I feel stuck or something. I'm stuck because I'm judging my journey. I should be doing this. I could be doing this. No. You should and could and are doing exactly the only thing that you have ever been meant to be doing, which is what is alive right now in the moment. This is it. And like, that's the trap of the mind, right? This is such a mind game. This shadow of being stuck, this pattern of being in a rut, it is such a mental realm because you are trying to do all of these things. Even surrendering to being stuck becomes a mind game because you're doing it with the frequency of, oh, if I just surrender and give myself permission to be where I'm at, it'll get me out of where I'm at faster. So you're just trying to circumvent where you're at by giving yourself permission to be where you're at, which is not truly surrendering to where you're at. So this is a mind battle. This is just a loop here.
Yeah, I catch myself doing that all the time, and I'm like, oh, I can like just drop the intention. Why can't I just be here, right? It's a dance for sure.
Mm-hmm. You're stuck until you're not stuck. Surrender. Yeah. And you know what? You'll fight it in your mind until you truly surrender, because usually for me, I usually just get defeated. I'm like, oh my God, nothing I'm doing is working. And then you have no choice because you're stuck.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. 100%.
Is that helpful? I don't think it's good advice. You just stay stuck until you're defeated about how stuck you are, and then you truly surrender, and then you become unstuck.
In the words of Richard Rudd, suffering is grace.
That is a doozy.
I know, right? These like truths about the universe. You're just stuck until you're not stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, oh wise one.
Yeah. Okay, Obi-Wan. That's super clear. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Balancing personal growth with acceptance of the present moment feels impossible and is something I have a hard time accepting. How, if you can, do you strike the balance in your own life, accepting the present moment?
I think it is impossible, to be honest, because it's a paradox.
It's always is.
Yeah. I think that is one of life's paradox. I've been really enjoying looking at things that are paradoxical. There are many, and because they really infuriate me. I'm like, no, there has to be a right answer, a right way. And it's just like, nope, it's a yes and moment. It is such an innate human thing to desire, to want change or to want this or that or imagine. It's one of those drivers behind our imagination and our creative juices. And I believe humans are just essentially creation machines. We're here to make stuff, to experience things, make stuff, grow, do it all over again. And that desire, that pursuit of something, right, is pretty much innate in all of us. And I don't think you can condemn that or make it bad, but you have to balance it with the being content. And I think that it's learning and coming to grips with accepting paradox. On one hand, you are exactly where you are supposed to be, which means everything that's going on in this moment is a yes. And what is going on in that moment is also your heart desire for more. Mm-hmm. So it's paradoxical. It's like, yeah, you want more, and whatever you want or are experiencing in this specific moment is perfect, which means your desire for more is also okay, or your desire for different, or your desire for quote unquote better.
Totally. And it's like, I love the way you worded that, because it's like, it brings that idea that it is from this total acceptance of self in the moment, that is what emerges from like that, like aligned, I want more, where it is like, where it's that innocent, beautiful, natural part of being human that isn't attached to ego, that isn't detrimental to to the feminine, to Mother Earth, you know, like that, like where it becomes just so aligned and it comes through you because it's just you. It's just like within that moment emerges this beautiful piece of spirit in physical world, starts to, you know, become embodied. And yeah, so I feel like that's where that balance is just like, yeah, like completely accepting that. And like you said, completely accepting that it is human nature to want more and to explore and to have fun and to create and to be curious and to get our hands dirty and to play, right? It's wonderful.
Yeah, and the wanting more, like we so condemn that, right? Like, oh, you should be humble and happy with what you have. And now you're a greedy, selfish narcissist for wanting more. And when I say wanting more in this dynamic, I'm not saying you are taking and stripping and raping and, you know, like this excessive greed. That's not the frequency of wanting more. Like you said, there is an innocence to that heart desire, that human. I want more knowledge. I want to learn more. I want to create more. It's the now what? I played so hard outside all day on the playground with my friends. I had so much fun. I had a nap and now I have all of this energy. Now what am I going to do? Now what am I going to experience? Who am I going to talk to now? It's the newness, that freshness. That's not negative, which we so frequently see society paint that desire for more. It's like, oh, how greedy are you? How much money is enough? Because we so closely see that desire linked to finances or abundance or manifestation culture even. And it's like, no, you can want more opportunities to serve. You can want more opportunities to create, to engage, to experience. All of that comes from that same innate human desire for something more, something beyond, something different, something new. Just desire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love those paradoxes too. I think they're just super, super cool to contemplate. And they just like really like shake up the mind and make it realize it's like, oh yeah, the mind really does like, it's box one, box two, it's black and white, it's ones and zeros, it's computer code really, right? That's the mind kind of energy. And so that's where we get to recognize the limits of our mind and bring in more of our being, our heart, our soul, our whole body in, and not just live just from this one little box up here.
Yeah. So true. Well, my teacup is empty and our questions are answered, darling.
We did it! I hope people still want to ask us questions after this.
Yeah. People are going to be like, who are these unhinged creatures? Oh, of course, yes, you can comment below, subscribe, like all of the things, all of the links to everything, all of the podcast episodes that we might have referenced, everything, all of that will be in the description, in the show notes, the captions below. Thank you for being here for our first high tea. This is going to be a fun series. I'm excited about it. Basically, it's Alana and I hanging out talking about things we talk about anyway.
It's true.
Yeah. It's just, you guys just are in on our conversation now. So thank you for being here. All of the love. And we'll see you again with something else.
Toodaloo.